It's time again for Northwestern Outdoors Radio, the show covering fishing, hunting, and all sorts of outdoor recreation and destinations right here in the region you live and play in. Northwestern Outdoors is brought to you every week by Max Lure Company, makers of the world-famous wedding ring spinner, by Loophole, America's Optics Authority, and by Sportsman's Warehouse, America's premier outfitter. Northwestern Outdoors is also sponsored by Wallowa County in Northeast Oregon, where you'll find both nature and fun. By Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing, offering you the affordable Canadian fishing trip of a lifetime. And by Camp Chef, the way to cook outdoors. So grab your fishing rod or hunting gear, load up the boat or lace up your boots, and let's head outdoors with your host, John Cruz.
Welcome to the show. Have you been out there yet? Have you been out there to enjoy some of that spring hiking? I got the opportunity to do so last week, and it was amazing. It started off as a rainy day where you didn't want to go outside at all, but I hopped in the truck and I drove east. I ended up at the Quincy Lakes Wildlife Area. My destination were the ancient lakes. It was a 2-mile hike to 4 lakes in a sagebrush desert floor surrounded by basalt cliffs and regular and seasonal waterfalls. Because of the weather and the fact it was midweek, not a single person was at the lakes. That's too bad, because the rain stopped, the clouds parted, it became sunny out, and it was beautiful. Got to do some trout fishing, even caught a fish, got to check out the waterfowl, listen to the birds, and even had coyote song accompanying me on my hike back in the early evening. It was a magical day, and better still, I'm heading back because the wildflowers aren't yet in bloom, but they're about to be. Just another reason to hike to a desert near you in the Northwest in the weeks ahead. This week on the show, we'll start off talking fishing off the northwest tip of the lower 48 near the fishing villages of CQ and Nia Bay on Washington's Olympic Peninsula. Tom Burlingame, the owner of XL Fishing Charters, will take you fishing for lingcod, halibut, sea bass, and salmon. And he also has a nice place for you to stay too, called the Inn at Nia Bay. Lance Mers will join us to introduce another offering that's new to the Max Lure Company product line, and this one is sure to catch both rainbow trout and kokanee out of places like eastern Washington's Lake Roosevelt, a body of water that gave up an abundance of both species in jumbo sizes the past couple of months. We'll put down our fishing rods and pack our suitcases to head overseas as we talk African safaris with one of the best-known hunting writers in America, Thomas McIntyre. Tom just finished an excellent book I've been reading titled August in Africa. It's a compilation of stories and essays he has put together about his time there over the past 40 years, and it is a great read. Don't believe me? Well, guess what? Tom's going to be sharing a passage of the book with you on this show. After you hear about August in Africa, you may want to go on a hunting adventure in Africa. Well, Tom has told me he'll be gracious enough to stick around and give you some advice that will come in handy for booking your very first African safari. After we talk to Tom about hunting in Africa, we'll share some Sportsman's Warehouse fishing reports from every one of our Northwest states, as well as some upcoming events coming up at state and national parks near you. We'll wrap things up with your Sportsman's Warehouse Trivia Question of the Week, where you get the chance to win the $25 gift card we give away every week from America's premier outfitter. And now, it's time for another edition of Sportsman Spotlight, hosted once again by David Sparks. This week, David talks to the editor of Field and Stream, Colin Kearns, about some of the great springtime activities available right now on the water and in the field. Sportsman Spotlight is sponsored every week by Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing, offering affordable, all-inclusive saltwater fishing vacations out of Port Hardy, BC. Find out more at coastwidesportsfishing.com.
Spring has sprung and there's lots to do. David Sparks with Sportsman Spotlight. As the magazine Field and Stream has pointed out, after a long winter, we could all use some adventure. And right now, there is no shortage of fun reasons to get outside. The ice has thawed, fish are biting, gobblers are strutting, black bears are moving, and morels are popping up like mad. Field & Stream has collected 45 skills and tips to ensure this spring is epic. I called Field & Stream Senior Deputy Editor Colin Kearns and asked him to expand.
Yeah, it's kind of, we're all outdoorsmen going through February and maybe early March and certainly January too. It can be a cold, quiet time, and so this issue with our April issue, there's a lot of fun stuff happening in spring. Crappie fishing, trout fishing, black bear hunting if you're into that, turkey hunting, and even some foraging for stuff like morels and other good stuff. And so we just kind of wanted to do this big package in the magazine that kind of hopefully gets everybody excited to get outside and do any number of all the awesome stuff that's out there to do in the spring.
Now, if that ain't motivation enough, I don't know what is. But if you want to learn about these 45 skills that I mentioned earlier, then pick up the April issue of Field & Stream. This is David Sparks with Sportsman Spotlight. And hey, if you've got a hunting or a fishing story that you'd like to share with all of us, then get in touch with us at aginfo.net.
A quality and affordable fishing adventure is waiting for you off Vancouver Island with Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing. Located in Port Hardy, British Columbia, you can drive or fly to your all-inclusive guided fishing vacation. Whether you're after big salmon, heart-fighting halibut, or a cooler full of red snapper and lingcod, you can catch it all here. Better yet, your lodging, meals, and fish processing are all taken care of. Want one more reason to go? The price. With the Canadian dollar exchange rate where it is right now, your U.S. dollar goes further. Space is limited, so go to coastwidesportsfishing.com to book your trip. That's coastwidesportsfishing.com for an incredible BC fishing adventure.
You can fish from a boat, or you can stand on shore, or you can use a pontoon with carpet on the floor.
You're back with Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz. We've got a great guest for you who's going to tell you about some fantastic ocean fishing opportunities in the Strait of Juan de Fuca. His name is Tom Burlingame. He is the owner of XL Fishing Charters. And if you listen to the Pacific Northwest edition of our sister show, America Outdoors Radio, that broadcasts out of the Seattle Everett area, you've probably heard a lot from Tom over the last couple months. But most of our listeners on this show have never heard about the great fishing that's available there. Tom, welcome to Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
Thanks for having me, John.
So, Tom, let's first off talk about exactly where you're fishing. You're on the Olympic Peninsula, and your territory, so to speak, is between CQ and Nia Bay. Why is the fishing so good out there?
Well, for the salmon fishing, we are right on the highway. All the fish coming back from Alaska, headed to the Columbia River and rivers south of there, come right by us. Also, all the fish turning up the strait and headed into the Puget Sound have to come right by us. So we're kind of at a crossroads here, and it's a great place to go salmon fishing.
Well, it's not only a great place to go salmon fishing, which you have been doing very well in a CQ area opener there for the last couple of months, but it's a great place for bottom fish. And I understand that not just during the spring, but all through the summer months too, where you fish in Marine Area 4, that you can catch lingcod and black rockfish all summer long.
That's right, John. We're open clear till October 15th. For lingcod and black rockfish in Area 4, and it's a great fishery. You can expect to catch a limit when you come to Nia Bay.
And what is a limit when it comes to rockfish and lingcod for the Nia Bay area?
For Area 4, it's a 9-fish aggregate, which includes 7 rockfish and 2 lingcod. Or you can have, if you happen to catch a big cabezon, you can keep it as one of the fish, but you can only have a 9-fish maximum.
Okay, so I know the minimum size limit in Area 4 is 22 inches for lingcod. What's the maximum size? And I guess the follow-up question to that is, what is considered a big lingcod in your neck of the woods?
Well, the limits are 22 inches in the strait, Area 4B, and of course in the ocean they took the limit off this year, so there's no size limit on lingcod, and there is no upper size limit on lingcod in our area in both Area 4B and 4. And a big one is around a 40-pound fish. It isn't unusual to see a fish like that. They're not an everyday experience, but we see a few of them that size every year on our boat.
Wow. So I want to go over this with you. The removal of the size limit for lingcod, why did the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife do this? It seems to me if you're interested in conservation, you wouldn't want to remove the lower size limit. Are they overpopulated?
Well, they are very populated in our area, and the department was more worried about rockfish than lingcod when they made that decision. And so what happens oftentimes is an angler will go out and get over a school of rockfish and really do well, but they don't quite get their lingcod that quickly. So they spend the rest of their day fishing for lingcod and encountering rockfish at that while they're fishing. And to cut down on the mortality of rockfish, released rockfish, they made two moves. One was to remove the size limit of lingcod, hoping to get the angler off the water quicker. And they didn't think it would affect the population that much in doing it, so they decided to go that way. The other rule change that they made this year is that they made release devices for rockfish mandatory. So when you're fishing out here, make sure you have one of those release device, a Sequelizer, a Shelton release device, or something like that, so that you can safely release those rockfish that you encounter that you don't want to keep.
All right. Well, thanks for explaining that. Makes a little more sense to me now. The next question, when it comes to catching these rockfish and these lingcod, are you jigging them up, so to speak, with curly-tail grubs and leadhead jigs, or what?
You betcha. We're using lead jigs. Grubs work well with a bullet head jig. All of the above, John. They're not real picky fish. The key to catching rockfish is just to get over them.
Now, I know that when it comes to fishing the Strait of Juan de Fuca and fishing out of Nia Bay, halibut comes to mind, but we have a very limited season this year, just a few days, so we're not going to go into that. Let's move forward to salmon. There's been a lot of concern over whether there's going to be a salmon season or not, but you've been participating in the North of Falcon process, which decides what those salmon seasons are going to be, and it looks like we are going to have some fishing out of CQ and Nia Bay this summer, doesn't it?
It sure does. The ocean options for Area 4, all three options that were sent out to public review from the first Pacific Fisheries Management Council meeting included a season. And in two of those options, it included both Chinook and coho. In one of the options, it's just a Chinook option. So this next week, we'll sit down and at the next Pacific Fisheries Management Council meeting, and final option will be selected, but for sure there's going to be a season.
That is good to hear. One last thing, especially for folks who live in the inland Northwest and are thinking about coming out to fish with you, is where the heck am I going to stay? And folks who are familiar with the Olympic Peninsula, especially out by Nia Bay, there's not a lot of great places to stay out there, but you have an exception because you have your own place where folks can stay.
Yeah, 4 years ago we opened up the inn at Nia Bay, which was the former Kingfisher Inn, and it has worked out very nice for us. And you don't have to fish with us to stay with us. If you're coming out and you're bringing your own boat, you're welcome to stay with us and fish out of your own boat also.
But if folks fish with you, they get a bit of a discount, don't they?
You betcha. We give you a package deal, so you save 20% on your lodging when you're fishing with us.
Well, that sounds like a great deal to me. Tom, one more fishery I want to talk about here. And this has always been kind of a bycatch fishery, I understand, for anglers out there off of CQ, is the pink salmon. Now, the run this year is expected to be very low, only 1.1 million fish, about 20% of the 10-year average, though I understand it's going to be a little bit stronger over on the Olympic Peninsula Hood Canal side than it is up towards the Skagit River side. Do you expect any sort of fishery for pinks this year?
I expect that you're going to be able to keep a pink, but as we used to have a 2 pink bonus here in Area 4. So you could catch a Chinook, you could catch a regular limit, a Chinook or coho or two of one or the other, and then you could have an additional 2 pinks. I don't think you'll see the additional pinks this year. In one option, we do have an additional pink, so if in that option it would be a 3-fish limit, but I wouldn't trust that that's going to happen.
All right. Well, that's fair enough. And hopefully 2 years from now, the pink run will be a bit better. So anything else that we need to touch on, or should we just kind of review the fact that you've got some great opportunities from spring all the way into the fall?
Yeah, that's what I think I would like to point out to people is Nia Bay is about as close to an Alaskan experience as you're going to get without the big price tag. So if fishing's in your plan, Nia Bay is a good choice.
There you go, folks. So whether it be blackmouth salmon in the winter off of CQ, whether it be halibut in May off of Nia Bay for the few days it's available, whether it be lingcod and rockfish from April all the way to October, or whether it be coho and Chinook salmon in the summer months with maybe some pink as well. Go to xlfishingcharters.com to book your trip now. The website again, XL, spelled EXCEL, fishingcharters.com. That's xlfishingcharters.com. And they've also got information there about the inn at Nia Bay. Tom, thanks for sharing this with us on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
Thanks for having me, John.
The woods, oh, I fish everywhere.
Quality and affordable fishing adventure is waiting for you off Vancouver Island with Chad's Coast-Wide Sports Fishing. Located in Port Hardy, British Columbia, you can drive or fly to your all-inclusive guided fishing vacation. Whether you're after big salmon, heart-fighting halibut, or a cooler full of red snapper and lingcod, you can catch it all here. Better yet, your lodging, meals, and fish processing are all taken care of. Want one more reason to go? The price. With the Canadian dollar exchange rate where it is right now, your U.S. dollar goes further. Space is limited, so go to coastwidesportsfishing.com to book your trip. That's coastwidesportsfishing.com for an incredible BC fishing adventure.
Want to go fishing and make money? You are in luck. This year's Pike Minnow Sport Reward Fishery kicks off May 1st. Just register at a check station and go fishing for 9-inch or longer northern pike minnow within designated waters of the Columbia or Snake River. Then you bring your fish back and collect a voucher good for a cash reward. The more fish you catch, the more they're worth. $5, $6, and $8 per fish. Catch a pike minnow with a special tag and you've landed $500. Find out more at pikeminnow.org. That's pikeminnow.org.
You're back with more of the great outdoors on Northwestern Outdoors Radio with John Cruz.
It's that time again. It's time for another Max Minute.
Fish on!
Brought to you every week by Max Lure Company. With us here again is Lance Mers. Lance, we've been getting lots of news all winter long about the big rainbow trout and the huge monster kokanee being caught out of Lake Roosevelt. And a lot of anglers are using the same lure to catch both fish. What's the lure you would recommend for success on Lake Roosevelt for both species?
Well, always try pinks and oranges when you're on Lake Roosevelt. And go to that southern part by the Grand Coulee Dam to target those fish. But one thing that I would suggest is using a Max Lure Pee Wee Hoochie. And the reason why I say that is it's got a 1.5-inch squid body on size 2 hooks, which is good enough for those big fish in Lake Roosevelt. But the cool thing about it is it doesn't have any type of blade on top of it. So you can switch this out and find your right fit. You could put a metal blade on there, or you can switch it out and put a smile blade on there. The sky's the limit with this lure, John.
Do you recommend fishing the Pee Wee Hoochie behind like a Double D Dodger or a Sling Blade or some other flasher?
Yeah, you can definitely use a Double D Dodger, which a lot of guys up there are fishing with planer boards right now. So a Double D Dodger is going to work absolutely fantastic because it pushes it away from the boat and out of the boat path.
All right, so it is the Pee Wee Hoochie. It is the lure you need to target both big rainbow and big kokanee at Lake Roosevelt and at other lakes where you find both species. There's plenty of them here in the Northwest. It's the Pee Wee Hoochie. Look for it at a sporting goods store near you or at maxlure.com.
Looking for that extra something that will get more salmon or trout into your boat? Then check out the Double D Dodger from Max Lure. The Double D does double duty and helps you catch more fish. The Double D's flash attracts lunkers, and the Dodger's patented stop-start action works wonders to get those fish biting. The Double D does even more by acting as a side planer to get your bait away from the boat where the fish are more likely to be and more apt to strike. The Double D Dodger. It's the Dodger you've got to have from Max Lure.
Tired of the same old fishing hole? Then head to Northeast Oregon's Wallowa County. Enjoy a weekend on the glacial waters of Wallowa Lake, where you can troll for the deep water excitement of kokanee or cast your line for some trout fishing fun. Bring your float tube or canoe and enjoy fishing in some of Wallowa County's small lakes. Or don your waders and step into the clear waters of the Wallowa, Imnaha, or Grand Ronde rivers. Early to bed, early to rise, fish all day, and there'll be no need for lies when you fish the waters of Northeast Oregon's Wallowa County. Visit us online at wallawacountychamber.com.
Want to go fishing and make money? You are in luck. This year's Pike Minnow Sport Reward Fishery kicks off May 1st. Just register at a check station and go fishing for 9-inch or longer northern pike minnow within designated waters of the Columbia or Snake River. Then you bring your fish back and collect a voucher good for a cash reward. The more fish you catch, the more they're worth. $5, $6, and $8 per fish. Catch a pike minnow with a special tag and you've landed $500. Find out more at pikeminnow.org. That's pikeminnow.org.
More habitat equals more wildlife. Pheasants Forever is working hard every day to ensure there's more wildlife habitat for the future. Join the habitat leader and help create wildlife habitat in your community. To join us, go to pheasantsforever.org.
You're back with Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz, and I'll tell you what, we've got one heck of a guest for you. His name is Tom McIntyre. He has written for all the big magazines. He's been a field editor for Sports Afield and Field and Stream. He's written for Gray's Sporting Journal, Peterson's Hunting, Outdoor Life, you name it, to include the little publication where he lives in Sheridan, Wyoming. He's written for it. He's also written a number of books to include Days of Field, Dreaming the Lion, The Snow Leopard's Tale, The Shooter's Bible Guide to Optics, and more. Tom, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here.
Tom, you've got a brand new book out, and I've been reading it. I've really been enjoying it. Before we get into August in Africa, 40 years of essays and stories. 40 years. How many times have you been to Africa on safari?
Well, the foreword was written by Craig Boddington. Craig has been to Africa 100 times, and I have nowhere near that track record. But I've been to Africa, a dozen or so times in the course of the last 40 years, which probably isn't as much as it may sound like. I wish it would have been more, put it that way.
Well, I'll tell you what, you've captured a lot of it in the book, and I'm about halfway through it right now, and I think the great thing about your book is you don't have to read it from page 1 to the end. You can skip around to the different stories, the different essays, and you've got some great ones in there. And folks, it's not necessarily about hunting down a Cape buffalo. There's all sorts of great stories in here. You're a captivating storyteller, and I've never been to Africa, but you were inspiring me to go. What inspired you as a writer to focus so much on this subject during your career?
Well, it was nearly genetic. When I was a really small child, I went over to a friend of my father's house, and this was back in the 50s, I guess, and he had a buffalo head on the wall. He'd just come back from French Equatorial Africa. And for some reason, that struck a chord in me as the most fascinating thing in the world. And I spent all my growing up years hunting, and so I grew up in Southern California, so I hunted around there, but I kept wondering if someday I couldn't get to Africa. And in my early 20s, frankly, I had a little bit of money, and instead of investing it soundly, I went and invested it in Africa.
It's funny, and again, you'll get into that when you read this book, folks, but reading this book, I know that every writer is a reader, and I've got to ask, because there's been some great American writers that have written about Africa. Who were your influences? I have some guesses, having read portions of this book, but who were your influences growing up, reading about Africa and reading about safaris?
Well, Africa has the big five, the big game, and I think the big three of African writers, American writers, of Theodore Roosevelt, Ernest Hemingway, Robert Rourke, I think were the three major influences. And probably of all those three, I would say Rourke might have been the earliest and strongest influences. His book, Horn of the Hunter, was just a fascinating book for me to read as a teenager, and I loved his writing. I knew Peter Capstick. I liked Peter. Peter was pretty good. I don't think he was quite the writer as those other three guys were, though.
Well, I'll tell you what, as I'm reading your book, I see a little bit of Hemingway seep through there, and that, by the way, is meant as a compliment. Let's go ahead and share a little bit about your book with our readers. Do you have a passage you'd like to share from August in Africa?
Yeah, I'd love to. I've got a short story here, a short passage from a hunt I made in the Central African Republic back in the 80s. I was hunting giant eland, and I was with a tracker named Juma who had one arm. I think he had a kind of a checkered past, perhaps as a reformed poacher, and had an accident that had put him on a different path. So I'll just go ahead and read it. We've spotted a giant eland, We moved to where the trees ended at a wide, bare field of black volcanic rock. The eland was on the other side, where another stand of the big trees began, turned sideways to us. The distance had been cut to under 200 yards, and Juma gestured for me to shoot. I rested the rifle against the tree and let off the safety, putting the crosshairs into the middle of the eland's shoulder hump, trying not to let his wonderfully long horns distract me. As my finger lay on the trigger, the eland turned and wandered into the tall timber in a thicket of green bush within it. "No," Juma whispered. I lowered the gun and slipped the safety back on. Juma caught hold of my sleeve and, bent double, we crossed the open ground like some single, rare specimen of trotting mammal. Inside the timber, Juma circled downwind in wide arcs around the dense patch of short green leaf foliage. The eland must be feeding his way through. The African moved in a deft half-run, his plastic-sandaled feet never touching a twig. Jogging heavily behind him, I crunched down on a dry leaf, and Juma wheeled on me, tisking in reproach. We proceeded this way for many minutes, Juma biting his lip as he searched through the trees for a glimpse of the eland. Juma halted, taking my arm and whispering rapidly to me in the French language. He pointed to the solid wall of trees, then held his thumb and forefinger a small distance apart. "Too small? Wait a moment. What is it, Juma?" Impatient, I started to raise my rifle, but he pushed it down. "No, no, no," he insisted in a whisper. The bull eland glided out of the cover 80 yards away. He was quartering toward us with his ears up and the light through the trees behind him. He stood looking, unable to define us, and Juma whispered, "Yes, yes, yes." I brought the .375 up slowly, putting the duplex reticle of the scope on the point of the bull's left shoulder and let the safety off. Dust lifted from the eland's shoulder where the 300-grain soft-nosed bullet struck him. The eland bucked and spun, disappearing into the cover. We ran full out through the trees after the wounded bull. Then Juma snatched my arm, and there was the enormous animal staggering ahead of us, his shoulder broken and the bullet deep in his chest. I was going to shoot him again, but I saw that he was about to fall. He dropped his heavy horned head as if its weight suddenly became too much and began to sway, then lay down. He had his legs folded under him, and now he lifted his head and looked straight ahead, silent. I walked up to 20 yards from him, trying to control my panting from the run. Working the rifle's bolt, I angled another round in back of his ribs and into his chest. He rolled over, dead. He was sandy golden and half again as big as a horse. The clean white vertical stripes, black neck ruff, and heavy hump were just as I had always heard them described. He had a powerful warm smell that I would be unable to put out of my mind as long as I lived, and his black spiraled horns were nearly 40 inches long on the straight line from the bases to the tips, and over 48 inches around the spiral. One-armed Juma threw off his cap and shirt and bounced into the air ecstatically, proclaiming himself a grand tracker, again and again. He daubed his finger in the eland's shoulder wound and blooded himself. Then he came over to where I sat on an old termite hill, staring stunned at this perfect creature, my unloaded rifle laid across my knees. As he reached, grinning wildly, to mark my forehead too, a distant lion began to roar.
That, folks, is just one of the passages you'll get to read in August in Africa by Tom McIntyre. Safaris Into the Twilight, 40 years of essays and stories. Tom, where can folks find this great book?
Well, if they can't find it at their bookstore, certainly it's available on Barnes & Noble or Amazon.com, of course, and it's published by Skyhorse Publishing, and any place else they can look for it, ask for it in their stores, I guess. Support local bookstores whenever possible.
Absolutely. The book again, folks, August in Africa. It's by Tom McIntyre. Check it out. If you've ever wanted to read about hunting in Africa, this is definitely the book for you. Very well written, as you just heard. Tom, thanks for sharing this with us on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
I'd like to tell you I just brought down that buck, but I didn't. I missed. And you know why I missed? Because of the scope I've got on my rifle. You see, my friends told me to get a Leupold rifle scope. Why? Well, because Leupold is America's optical authority. They make a huge variety of quality scopes for every need, and they make them right here in the Northwest. Unfortunately, I didn't listen. Now, I've got nothing to look forward to except a long, empty-handed walk back home. Next time I come out into the field, there's going to be a Loophole scope on my rifle.
Loophole Rifle Scopes. Check out the whole line at loophole.com and look for them at a sporting goods store near you.
Sportsman's Warehouse is America's premier outfitter and has the quality gear you need for hunting, fishing, camping, and more. Our knowledgeable and friendly staff will help you find the right product so you get the most out of your time in the field or on the water. In addition to stocking superior clothing and outdoor equipment, we offer in-store events and seminars so you can enjoy a successful adventure. With over 70 stores located in the United States, it's easy to find a Sportsman's Warehouse store near you. Find out more at sportsmanswarehouse.com.
Welcome back to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz. You heard from Tom McIntyre, the author of August in Africa, just a few moments ago. Well, he's going to stick with us, and he's going to stick with us to help you book your first safari to Africa. It's not so easy to figure out who to go hunting with and how to book a trip like this on another continent, so we thought we'd ask a guy who's been on a dozen or so safaris. Tom, thanks for taking the time to stick with us today.
My pleasure.
So, Tom, when it comes to finding a safari, the usual suspects, so to speak, in terms of how folks figure out how to go on one would include sportsman shows. You always see outfitters and professional hunters and booking agents there. There's banquet donations sometimes that you'll see at like Friends of the NRA banquets. And, of course, there's word of mouth from friends that have gone before you. But what would you suggest in terms of the best way to figure out how to book a safari in terms of finding the right outfitter?
Well, you certainly brought up some good suggestions. There is the Safari Club International and the Dallas Safari Club, and it might be worthwhile looking for chapters of those two organizations and joining, and you can then talk to people who've had personal experience in Africa. They can certainly point you in the right direction. Also, the other possibility is to find a good booking agent. For one, Cabela's has an agency. There's many agencies out there who handle safaris in Africa, and that's a good resource because generally the person you're dealing with has actually been to the area, has met the outfitter, has seen the facilities, and he can also sort of help curate, I guess, the African experience for you, depending on what you're looking for. If you're looking for the classic African tented safari, that is still available. It's extremely expensive. I won't try to sugarcoat that.
Okay.
But if you're looking for a first-time trip to Africa, you certainly can't go wrong with places in some hunting areas in South Africa and Namibia. I think are probably the two best choices for anybody contemplating a very first-time trip over there.
Okay, so let's talk about what to hunt for your first trip, because I mean there's the most dangerous game, so to speak, in terms of the big five. There's the plains game, and then you've got the off the wall stuff like bird hunting, which doesn't appeal to some but I think would be a blast. You know, for the first timer, what would you suggest in terms of quarry?
I would say either South Africa or Namibia, and that it would be a mixed bag safari, probably 4 or 5 animals over the course of 10 days or 2 weeks. The price is not prohibitive. If you're willing to spend, for instance, money on a really top-end elk hunt in this country, you can certainly purchase a safari of that type in Africa for relatively the same amount of money. And then you're looking at, plains game essentially, greater kudu, gemsbok, wildebeest, and several other species of game. And that's a great introduction to it, and it can tell you one way or the other if you like it or not. And and I don't expect everybody will like it, but some of you will find it. And I think if you're thinking you're only going to go to Africa once, you better think again.
All right. And here's another question. How long? What's the minimum and what's the perfect time in terms of a safari, in terms of how long should you be there to really soak it all in?
Well, you want to look for this is always kind of a tricky question. You want to look for the dry season. Try to find out when the dry season is over there. Africa tends to be wet season and dry season, and the wet season is exactly what it sounds like. The rains come in, the water is everywhere. The game becomes dispersed everywhere, Whereas if you wait for the dry season, then you can get to where the water holes are a little more concentrated, the game's more concentrated. The grass can be burned, which is always a consideration. As far as the length for a first safari, boy, I think you really want to try to go 10 days, 2 weeks. You know, there are places you can hunt. You can do 5-day safaris, but I don't think that's quite the experience to give you the real feel for Africa that you're looking for.
One other thing to throw in there, I know that some of these booking agents, some of these operations will say, hey, in addition to the hunting, you can go on a photo safari too, and we'll take you to one of the big game parks. Is that worthwhile?
Absolutely. I've done that with my family, with my wife and my son when he was much younger, and we went over to an area outside of Kruger Park, and it was really a wonderful experience for all of them. Their game drives, being able to approach elephants and leopards and to photograph them and just to be around them is without any zoo bars between you and them is really quite an experience. And I think that's certainly worthwhile. Also, don't hesitate to bring. I say you bring your wife. Your wife may want to do the hunting. I don't know. But, I mean, don't hesitate to bring a family member with you to Africa on your own hunting safari because they're extremely well treated. In general, it's equivalent of 5-star service you might find in a hotel somewhere. They're not going to have to rough it in the classic sense, unless there are, of course, areas in Africa where they are going to have to rough it.
Sure.
And they may not want to do that, but if you're looking at South Africa, there's certainly all the luxuries you could hope for at a reasonable price.
Well, there you go. As you can see, an African experience doesn't have to be once in a lifetime, and it can be a lot closer than you think. So, if you want to find out more about Africa and hunting in Africa, pick up Tom McIntyre's book. It's August in Africa, Safaris into the Twilight, 40 Years of Essays and Stories. You can find it at a bookstore near you. You can find it on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, all the usual places. That's August in Africa. Tom, thanks for this great advice for all of our listeners on booking their first safari to Africa.
And good luck to all of you.
Tom, thanks so much for that great advice. Let's turn our attention to some fishing reports from around the Northwest, courtesy of our sponsor, Sportsman's Warehouse. That's right, the staff at every Sportsman's Warehouse store is always keeping tabs on the fishing near you. In eastern Idaho, Henry's Fork is a good bet for fly anglers right now, according to the folks at the Pocatello Sportsman's Warehouse store. Box Canyon has been fishing well with black rubber legs, zebra midges, and Griffith gnats. Blue wing olives have also been hatching on the lower river. The folks at the Helena, Montana Sportsman's Warehouse might steer you to Canyon Ferry Reservoir. There is open water on most, if not all, of the lake at this point. Trout are cruising the shorelines and are being caught by fly anglers using leech patterns. Spin anglers are catching good trout on marabou jigs or power bait and night crawlers. No reports on the walleye yet. The Gillette store has a brief report about Lake DeSmet near Buffalo, Wyoming, suggesting anglers use night crawlers on a slow death hook or minnows to catch trout right now. And the crew at the Wenatchee Sportsman's Warehouse store reports the walleye fishing on eastern Washington's Banks Lake has been slow, but is on the cusp of rapidly improving. The water just needs to warm up a bit, and when it does in the next couple of weeks, they recommend pulling crawler harnesses and jigging for those wonderful spring walleye. Finally, the folks at the Hillsboro store say the springer fishing on Tillamook area rivers has been very slow, but there was some fair to good steelhead fishing to be found this past week on the Nestucca River. Good choices would be spinners, spoons, or bobber dogging beads or small egg clusters, especially when the rivers drop and begin to clear after rain events. Did we miss your favorite lake or river? If we did, just go to your local Sportsman's Warehouse store, walk up to the fishing counter. They've got all the information you need and the fishing tackle you need too for success. Stick around. We've got some upcoming events to tell you about taking place at state and national parks near you.
Leupold Gold Ring Optics are built to perform at the highest level, shot after shot, year after year. Our rifle scopes, binoculars, spotting scopes, rangefinders, and more always come through when you need them most. That's why our American-built products have a lifetime guarantee. Or as we like to say here at Leupold, they are guaranteed for a lifetime of performance, not a lifetime of replacement. Find out more about our top quality gear and our lifetime guarantee at Leupold.com. Leupold, America's optics authority.
Looking for the ultimate cooking machine for your backyard or patio? Look no further than Camp Chef's new pellet grill and smoker. With user-friendly features like an auto ignition, digital readouts, and internal meat temperature sensors, it's easy to smoke the tastiest salmon, ribs, brisket, and turkey you'll ever eat. And an innovative system makes cleanup a snap. Everyone will want the food you're cooking on your Camp Chef pellet grill and smoker. The quality smoker that's second to none. Find out more at campchef.com. Camp Chef, the way to cook outdoors.
Sportsman's Warehouse is America's premier outfitter and has the quality gear you need for hunting, fishing, camping, and more. Our knowledgeable and friendly staff will help you find the right products so you get the most out of your time in the field or on the water. In addition to stocking superior clothing and outdoor equipment, we offer in-store events and seminars so you can enjoy a successful adventure. With over 70 stores located in the United States, it's easy to find a Sportsman's Warehouse store near you. Find out more at sportsmanswarehouse.com.
One more time this week for Northwestern Outdoors Radio with John Cruz.
It's time for upcoming events, and this Easter weekend and next weekend are free weekends to visit any national park in our country. That's right, the weekend of the 15th and the 22nd, you don't have to pay a dime to visit any one of our national treasures. So, if you're looking for an excuse to go to one, I think this would qualify. You may be thinking, there's nothing going on at this time of year at our national parks in the West, but that's not true. For example, we told you about sage grouse viewing last week on the show, and one place you can do this with the help of a helpful ranger during both of these fee-free weekends and also the last weekend of April is at Grand Teton National Park. The ranger-led spring grouse strut is your opportunity to go on an early morning excursion to watch these remarkable birds try to attract a mate. Reservations are required. Ride-sharing is encouraged. You will meet at the Craig Thomas Discovery and Visitor Center at 5:30 in the morning. You are going to be outside for an hour, so dress warmly. If you want to reserve, here's the phone number. Get out your pens, get out your pencils. Here we go. 307-739-3399. Again, 307-739-3399. And one more time, 307-739-3399 to reserve your ranger-led spot on the grouse strut at Grand Teton National Park. Speaking of free days, there's also a couple of past free days at Washington State Parks. One of them is today for you Saturday listeners. The other one is next Saturday, the 22nd. You can visit any one of the 100 plus state parks in Washington for free both days. No Discover Pass required, though. To be honest, the $35 annual investment in Washington State Parks is a good deal, and it really helps these parks out. And now, it's time for your trivia question of the week. You might be humming the tune, "You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog" by Elvis Presley when you reel one of these sharks in. They are very common in the Northwest, can measure over 5 feet in length, and are attracted to those herring you are wishing a salmon would be biting on instead. Despite that, they can be fun to catch, and some folks actually target these fish with shark fin soup in mind. Do you know the name of this shark species? If you do, go to our Facebook page at Northwestern Outdoors Radio and like our page, find the post, give us your answer there, or if you prefer, go to our website at northwesternoutdoors.com. Just go to the Contact Us page and let us know the name of this shark species that'll have you humming the tune, "You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog." By the way, if you're looking to hear our show in other places, you can do so on your Android device. Just download us with Google Play through Podbean. We've got podcasts there on the Podbean app. All you have to do is go to Google Play, look for Podbean, look for America Outdoors Radio, and you will have both of our shows. Another place you can listen to Northwestern Outdoors Radio and our sister show, America Outdoors Radio, is on the WRVO Radio Network. You'll find that at RenoViolaOutdoors.com. We've got to go, but again, I do wish you a happy Easter. And if you're a Christian, you know this is a holiday that brings with it a lot of hope and forgiveness as well. I hope you get the opportunity to spend time with family and maybe the kids or the grandkids. Maybe some Easter egg hunts are in order, and maybe some time around the table for dinner with a big ham, or if you got lucky, maybe an early spring gobbler. Until next time, take care. God bless, and make it a point to spend some time outdoors.